sometime in a year which ends in the letters AD, we're going to get a remake of one of the greatest games ever made, Final Fantasy VII. Recently, now it's the year 2018, right?
Yes.
So 21 years since Final Fantasy VII came out. I want to say 11 years ago, for its 10th anniversary, they started making games and other media around Final Fantasy VII called the Compilation of Final Fantasy VII. And this involved the movie Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which I think is probably the best video game movie ever made at this point.
Not a lot of competition.
No, not a lot of
is it?
competition. It's called Final Fantasy VII Advent Children.
Was that
I've
the
never heard of
sequel
this.
to Spirits Within, or
No. What is Spirits Within? I know not
Spirits
of
Within
what you
exists
speak.
deep within the darkest regions of your heart?
Ooh.
Probably why I've buried it so
Kingdom
far
Hearts?
down of
That's what this has been leading up to.
all hearts end in darkness, otherwise known as Spirits Within.
I like how quickly Spirits Within just disappeared from it. Like,
Oh,
never
gosh.
on cable TV, never to stream anywhere.
No.
Try searching.
That's
it.
probably why I've never heard of it.
It's before
Advent Children, though,
Children.
is legitimately good, especially the complete version on Blu-ray. If you've never seen, they added a whole
I
bunch of
haven't.
scenes and
That's
stuff.
cool, yeah.
Yeah, we should watch that at some point. But they did that. They did that movie. They did an anime called Before Crisis, which tied into a mobile game, which we never saw over here.
Was it the Turks mobile game?
Yes,
I wanted to play that, but that was like the old Nokia flips that they had.
it was,
Yeah.
but it was only available in the Japan market.
I was so upset back then.
So they did that. They did probably one of my favorite things that they've ever done. Final Fantasy VII. That's not Final Fantasy VII. Is Crisis Core for the PSP. Such a great underrated game because no one owned a PSP except for me.
I never got a chance to play the game, but I have watched every cutscene
Yeah.
through YouTube.
So it's great. It's fantastic. And then they also did the less successful but still pretty cool looking Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus for the PS2,
Was that the third-person
Shooter
with
starring Vincent
Yeah,
and Kate Sith
I heard that the only,
and Yuffie.
I heard the only bad
Now
part
you're just making
about
up
that
words.
was it's a third person, not a first person. So like I heard that like your character actually got in the way all the time.
Yeah, and I heard it was extremely repetitive. Like enter a room, clear the room of enemies, pick up all the loot, go to next room, rinse and repeat.
And I heard that it was a video game.
You would be correct in assuming that. Yeah.
I just wanted to contribute to that one.
So, where does this tie into this Final Fantasy VII remake that will come out 1,000 years from now? We just got some information from Tetsuya Nomura, who was the original character designer for Final Fantasy VII. And I believe he became the chief character designer for the series, starting with 7 for several of the entries. So he came out stating, "Not everyone may know this, but I'm remaking Final Fantasy VII." Right? He laughed at that too.
Okay, good.
Right now, I'm concentrating on Kingdom Hearts 3, but when that's finished, 7 will be where I head next. I'm thinking about ideas regarding the remake's release. I even spoke to producer Katase about it today. All of us old-timers are considering various developments in regards to what accompanies the remake. Like, if we can manage to do something about the compilation of Final Fantasy VII titles too. But for the time being, please wait for 7's turn to come. So, yeah, that... What would you think of that?
Suggestion, soon.
Well, yeah. I mean, not just the remake, but like adding that other stuff in there too. Like, what if they did something that incorporated Crisis Core into this remake?
Try to merge all of the different Final Fantasy VII titles into one game, kind of.
Yeah, we could do without Dirge of Cerberus, though.
Well,
Based on what I've heard, I never played the game.
Yeah, that would be interesting because just one thing that a lot of fans are worried is when you do a remake, like is it just going to be the same story just with beefed up graphics and different gameplay? You know, to make it interesting, like to actually add like more story to it.
Yeah.
Especially because the Crisis Core, I think, one of its main goals too was to kind of clean up the story of Final Fantasy VII, because Final Fantasy VII is everywhere. Like Japanese RPGs back in the day, they like as far as story went, like they just went off the walls and in every direction that they could.
Yeah. And I just feel like there's still to this day there's really nothing that Western RPGs really do that really makes you feel like you're like this is that game. Like you can't confuse 7 with any other game out there. And I do like the idea of incorporating things. There were several story aspects that got added, not just to Crisis Core, but before Crisis. Like you get to see a lot of what Sephiroth does as actually a soldier first class.
Yeah, and that's neat.
Yeah, and from the Turks' perspective too, because the Turks were super underdeveloped in the core game, and I feel like if you got the chance to take their story, because I don't know about you, but when I played the game originally, I thought that the Turks were characters you were not supposed to like. And then kind of at somewhere through, later in the game, they kind of become these more sympathetic characters.
Yeah. They start evolving as characters.
Yeah, and I thought that was super weird. And I was just like, okay, game, I don't know what you want me to feel about these characters. Like, at first I didn't like them, like, because I think the terminology or the words that Aerith's mom used was like, oh yeah, they're involved in all kinds of stuff, like kidnapping and torturing people. And they don't deny that.
Yeah. I like how the last...
I like what I like.
Your final interaction with the Turks, like you could either just like choose to
obliterate
fight
them,
or you could just be like, hey man, we don't want to fight you, and they're like,
yeah, you know what?
oh, okay, good. Yeah.
Same
okay,
here.
That's cool. All right. See you guys at the potluck.
I always fight them. They don't deserve to live.
Torture.
But I think that would be neat, because it seems like a lot of, from what I remember, before Crisis Core, that explores a lot of the Turks' backgrounds, and then upon playing that, you're just like, oh, okay, this does make more sense. Like the Turks are kind of like, they are this secret organ, like they're kind of like a mafia of sorts within Shinra, but at the same time, like they kind of don't have a choice. Like they kind of seem like they might have meant well at some point or another, but then you have Elena in there, who's like this blonde airhead of a character.
She's new.
And she makes all these mistakes. She like lets secret intel slip right in front of Zhang, who's like the leader, who's like probably got the coolest head of all of them, and then like they pair him up with Elena, and she's just like, oh yeah, that's right, I wasn't supposed to tell them that that the next place we're going to is the Junon Cannon, and they're just like, he's like, Elena, I don't think you know how this is supposed to work. Like, it was such a weird dynamic.
That was around the optional interaction when you went to that reactor and you found that red materia.
That was one. Yeah, and then they had one where you sneak up on Reno and Rude, and they're talking about whether they prefer Tifa or Aerith.
Dude, Final Fantasy VII taught me to read. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of reading in that game.
In middle school, like I was not into reading books. I wasn't into reading anything, and then I started playing Final Fantasy VII, and all of a sudden, like I was like in middle school, started reading on like a high school level. You know, it's like, oh, I love reading. Reading is great.
That's how I look at Pokemon.
Yeah.
Pokemon taught me how to read.
Tons of reading in that too.
Minecraft taught me how to type online. I got really quick at it. As long as we're just sharing about that. I have nothing to say.
That's all I can throw in.
I have nothing to say about Final Fantasy. So.
I grew up in the generation that was like, the game literally came out around the time I was born.
Oh, wait.
No
Pokemon?
excuses.
That's fine.
What are you talking about? What games?
Final Fantasy.
You don't know anything either.
No.
Okay, good.
My
Take
cousin
refuge
played the game,
with
and
you.
like I watched him play it like a little bit. I was like 2 or 3,
Right.
so I remember like the only thing I remember is Chocobos.
I know the very first game, but as we've covered before. That has nothing to do with the rest of the series.
Yeah. When the game comes out, I'm more than happy to buy it because, like you said, like Final Fantasy VII is like the most iconic Final Fantasy game.
When you play it now, it's kind of like walking through a storybook. You know, like it doesn't. It's got a like you have if you've played it while you were young, you know, you've got that nostalgic feeling to it. But like playing through it now, it's almost like, you know, reading like a storybook, you know, as you go through with all the different characters. Because in comparison to like to just the action of games nowadays and how theatrical they've become, like, you know, playing Final Fantasy VII again is like almost like it was made for children.
Well, I would say when you look at the art style, definitely, where they didn't have like a cohesive art style where it's like, oh, I'm walking around, I look like a Lego minifigure, and then, oh, battle comes in, wait, my character looks a lot cooler and much more like anatomically accurate.
The music was fantastic too.
Yeah. Graphically it is a very dated game, but story wise, no. It's my favorite fictional story, period.
So hopefully they don't mess with the story too much in the remake.
No, and the only thing I would think that they would do is Crisis Core does add things to adds like an entire character to the past, because Final Fantasy VII is based on events that happened 5 years prior. And that's what Crisis Core covers. They added a new character, and I hope that they would incorporate that better.
I hope that you can still go on a date with Barrett.
Most importantly.
It's fine. You've got Tifa and you've got Aerith and
Yuffie. Yuffie's also an option.
No, for dating.
Yes,
not for that point.
Yeah, you can go on a date with Yuffie.
I didn't think so. But basically, like, if you choose not to like talk to any of these, like, you know, characters, like
there's certain points of the game where the game is keeping tally of, oh, well, you did this over the other person, like all three of you fall through a hole in the ground. Do you go check on Tifa first or Aerith first? And it gives a point to the person that you go check on, but you don't know this is happening.
But the fun part is that like if you completely neglect all of them, then there's this certain point in the game where you go on a date with somebody. If you neglect all of the women, you go on a date with Barrett. Now, when you go on a date with Aerith or Tifa, because I've played through multiple times in Final Fantasy VII, you have, like, you know, in-depth conversation and character development.
It's a date.
When you go on a date with Barrett, you're both like this.
No one's saying a word to the other.
The entire time, just, like, kind of looking.
There is something you can do like, in favor of Barrett. When you buy the flower from Aerith at the very beginning of the game, and you don't even know Aerith's name, she's just a girl selling flowers. You buy the flower off her, and you get the option to give the flower to Tifa or Marlene. If you give it to Marlene, that's like the only thing I think you could do to make things go in Barrett's favor.
So what I'm hearing is Final Fantasy VII is a dating sim.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like the brothel part. Like,
yeah.
That's one of the only other parts about the game is when Cloud becomes the Cloud becomes a girl.
Cross-dressing, and it's great because you could either get, like, you know, like, I won't get into details.
Yeah,
but
use your imagination.
I've never heard about.
Let's just say that if your squat game is, like, you know, like, if it's 100% and you're real good at doing squats, you get the nice wig.
It makes me wonder how they're going to modernize stuff like that. It really, really makes me wonder. But it doesn't matter because it won't be the PlayStation 7 until we can play Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let's just face it.
It's total VR.
The Micro Station U. Everything merges.
Yeah. That PlayStation 9 commercial they did when the PS2 came out is going to be all too real. It just you just like inhale things and they like connect into your neural passages and like PlayStation 9 now booting.
I wish augmented reality were here now.
Soon.
Man, that would be a lot of fun.
Should be in our generation.
I'm happy.
You should experience that.
I'm happy with the TV and a controller.
Hopefully you're alive when it comes out.
I have great health benefits.
There you go.
Yeah.
For now.
And I use lotions and
scrubs. I only say it because I don't know how old you are.
How old do you think I am?
I do believe the scope of the podcast is being exceeded.
It is, but we have to answer this now because we've already brought the question. 29.
29.
No.
That's it's close. I am in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
It's close though. Not too far.